Perfect, thanks. Hi everybody. Welcome to the last Narrative Culture and Community Research Seminar of this semester. So I'm going to introduce Brad, Gyori and Steve Rafter for today's audio performance and talk on orchestrating empathy, which is going to explore masculinity and mental health through the immersive audio experience of Mr. Illusion. Brad's a principal academic in digital storytelling and the programme leader for our MA in creative writing and publishing. And his research interests include immersive, locative and interactive narratives. And he's previously worked as a writer and producer for networks such as MTV, VH1, FX and HBO Online. And he's also artist in residence at Poole Lighthouse. Steve's a senior lecturer in sound design at Bournemouth Uni, and his research interests include the influence of binaural sound on user experience, and his professional practice spans a number of fields, including TV, film, theatre, live events, sound installation, advertising and music. He's worked on many shows and live events across London, Edinburgh, the UK and Europe, and a range of high-profile projects for global brands. And in 2013, he founded Bomo's Sound Design Studio. So Brad is the writer-director of Mr. Illusion, and Steve is the sound designer of the 360 audio version. And I'm going to hand over to them and be quiet now and enjoy the show.
Thanks, Julia. So we're going to kick things off. We're not going to say a whole lot at the beginning. We're just going to play this 10-minute episode. Just a couple things, though. Make sure you have headphones in, because that'll make all the difference. Without them, it just isn't the same experience. The other thing, if we could ask you to mute your microphones, because that could potentially interfere with it. And then finally, if you wouldn't mind, turning your cameras on would be great. We had this great ambition of actually doing this in front of a live audience, and it's just nice to kind of see people's faces as it plays through. And there's not a lot to add at this point, except this is a scene. It's a piece that has 4 actors in it. This scene has 2 of our actors. One of whom is joining us, or was a second ago. Did we lose her? Oh, there she is. Okay, there's Rebecca.
Just embarrassed.
She's just hiding because of her frozen headphones. She doesn't want you to see her daughter's headphones. It's dealing with topics related to masculinity and mental health, and this is just the opening scene of the piece. Like I said, it's about 10 minutes long, and I'll turn things over to Steve, who did the audio mix for this.
Okay, thanks, Brad. So this is a bit of a work in progress. So it's hot off the press. I think I finished the final tweak on the mix this morning. So there may be a few things to iron out, but hopefully it's going to work for you okay. So just a reminder, please mute your mics and make sure you got headphones in. That's great. And then I will press play and share screen. Okay.
And so it begins. The Mancunian male rises at dawn, climbs out of his nest, and adjusts his plumage. He greets the new day with a mighty roar. Of course, this is no ordinary day. This is Saturday morning. And for this majestic beast, that means just one thing. One problem, the North London female is knackered. It's been one of those weeks. Just a few minutes of extra kip on a Saturday morning, is that too much to ask for? Apparently so. But the North London female has yet to deploy her secret weapon, the dreaded morning breath snorchestra. This is Mother Nature's great levelling mechanism. A way of helping the North London female fend off unwelcome advances.
Beth! You're snoring.
Sorry. But the Mancunian male is nothing if not intrepid. He is a simple creature with simple needs. Food, shelter, and a little Saturday morning shagfest. That's all he cares about. I know this because I've been studying the Mancunian male for 2 decades. As far as he's concerned, you can always expect the expected. Boring? Yes. Comforting? Absolutely. See, the specimen in question is none other than my sweet, dull, spontaneous as a glacier husband, Rob. Leave all that touchy-feely bullcrap to the metrosexual pretty boys. The Mancunian male is all man. And that means he can only focus on one thing at a time, and that thing is usually, well... Rob! Oh, do you mind? To be fair, the routine was originally my idea. As a working mum, I have to be ruthlessly efficient, and every Saturday there's this perfect 20-minute window between sunrise and when the kids get up. This is Rob's green light zone. How did I sell him on the idea? Simple. I gave it a macho twist. Told him this was his chance to be a kinda sex ninja. His mission, should he choose to accept it, is to execute a stealthy surgical strike to completely rock my world in exactly 15 minutes, 20 tops. Predictable? Sure, but that's the point. Quick but equitable foreplay, 2 positions max, no funny business, no regrets. That's how Mama likes it. Except when she doesn't. See, sometimes even this meticulously orchestrated micro-tryst is a bridge too far. On mornings like that, well, incoming!
Yeah!
Sadly, Rob has concocted a whole array of seduction strategies. There's the drive-by,
Oops.
the grope-a-dope,
Sorry.
and the dreaded spoon harpoon.
Rob! Do you mind?
Not if you don't.
Please, I'm trying to get some sleep.
But it's Saturday. Saturday morning.
Right. My one day to sleep in. Thanks for reminding me.
Okay, I get it. Rob is clearly annoyed. But where is it written that we are contractually obligated to do the deed every single Saturday morning come hell or high water, or water retention, or cramps, or headaches, or neck aches? Talking of necks, Rob is now pushing his nape against mine like I'm a flint and he's the match. In what universe is this hot? Still, he just keeps grinding and grinding until...
Ow!
What's wrong?
I don't know. It's like...
Yeah! Did you feel that? It was like a lightning bolt.
I know! Damn!
Who says old married couples can't have chemistry, eh?
That felt like electroshock, not foreplay, Rob.
Oh, whatever gets your motor running.
My motor?
Here's where I check my phone, and sure enough, the app is acting up. See, last week, I got us all implanted. Me, Rob, the kids, even our dog Boomer. Most of our neighbourhood are doing it, so I figured it's my motherly duty. Now, if Duncan gets kidnapped or Bethany elopes with a terrorist, I can switch on the New View app and instantly find them. But here's the weird part. There must be something seriously wrong with the chip in my neck. Because as I start rubbing it...
Rob, do you hear that?
Hear what?
Something's happening.
Finally.
What is this?
Just go with it.
So, you hear it too?
You what? Your heart beating? The angels singing? Nice to know I still have that effect on you.
It's not my heart. Those are definitely not angels.
Let's not overthink things, okay?
How can I help myself with all these weird voices coming in from all sorts of different directions and all of them sounding like Rob? But how is that possible? And they just keep getting louder and louder and weirder and weirder. And the whole time I'm thinking I just want them to stop.
What is wrong? And why do you keep rubbing your neck?
Hurts.
Here, let me. That better?
Not really.
Tease.
What?
I didn't say anything.
Look, Rob, I'm sorry if I'm not as receptive as you might like this morning. Just feeling a little...
Bitchy. Uptight. Frigid.
Bastard.
What was that for?
You know.
I was just rubbing your neck. Christ. Here. Relax. Is that better?
Oh. Yeah. Actually, it is. Yeah, that's good. Firmer, please.
If you say so.
Firmer.
Really?
Does she actually want me to...
She did slap me.
Very hard. Maybe she's into that kind
Firmer.
Kinky.
If you insist.
God damn it, Rob! What are you doing?
Nothing. Nothing?
Okay, just back off. I can rub my own neck, all right?
Right, fine.
The lady doth protest too much.
Oh, my God.
What is it now?
I don't know. I'm just a bit groggy. I feel like I'm still dreaming.
Of me?
Good. She can't control herself. Randy wench.
Rob, please, cut it out.
Cut what out?
If anyone's randy here, it's you.
So you're not...
I'm just tired, okay? You know how hard I've been working.
Yeah, right.
Of course. Miss Big Shot.
Marketing director for Edge Unlimited.
Just need a break.
She's right. She's tired. Again? What else is new?
Excuse me?
I didn't say anything.
Maybe I should give her a break. She has had a long week.
Like last week. And the week before. But Saturday morning was her idea. So why is she being so...
Was that a moan or a groan? A sigh of ecstasy, perhaps.
Rob, please!
She's begging for it.
Result!
Did I take a sleeping pill last night? I'm so loopy. I can almost hear...
She wants me. She needs me!
But does she really?
Maybe not.
Gotta admit, it's impressive.
Careful.
She seems a bit hacked off. Or aroused. Or both.
I can't even see your lips moving.
It's gonna be epic.
It's coming from all directions.
Huh?
What the hell is going on?
I don't know. I thought we were on the same wavelength.
The same way... Oh my God.
That's when it hits me. The chip in my neck. Of course, it's tapping into what Rob is thinking. But how is that possible?
Beth, are you all right?
She's losing it. She's so turned on.
Come, my lady, come, my lady.
Just...
Ow! Christ. Why'd you keep doing that?
We need a safe word.
Sorry. Can I have a minute?
Take 20.
Take a week. Take a decade.
Can you believe it? 1 minute, I'm lying there as innocent as a lamb. The next, my head is filled with all these crazy, conflicting, kinky... But this can't be happening, right?
I should be more understanding.
Of course. It's that time of the month.
Huh?
Or maybe menopause.
What?
I didn't say anything.
Ignore her. Kiss her.
Do it.
Oh, yeah.
She wants me.
Hence the heavy breathing, like.
It's called hyperventilating. I just need a little space. Okay?
Okay. Oh,
Fine.
Thank you. Rob,
Yeah?
you're not upset, are you?
No. I understand. Anyway, there's other stuff I can do.
like maybe the laundry.
That would be nice.
And mow the lawn.
Now we're talking.
And I can fix that dripping bathroom sink.
That might help her sleep better.
Oh, that's sweet.
What?
Do you mean it, really? Oh, Rob, I'm sorry. Come here.
Oh, well, okay.
Now we're talking.
Shh.
This is her favourite position.
Hush.
The angle of incidence maximizes clitoral stimulation.
Okay, we're done.
Beth?
That's the end of episode 1. Oh, you're all on mute.
All right, so why don't I share the PowerPoint and let's see, go through my desktop. One moment here. All right. 1 second. And can you see the PowerPoint? Great, and you can hear me. Okay. So what was that strange thing we just listened to? Well, first of all, it's the beginning of a larger piece. This piece, Mr. Illusion, conceived of as both a theater piece and also an audio-only, immersive audio piece. So the name of the talk is Orchestrating Empathy, Creating Discussions about Masculinity and Mental Health with the Immersive Audio Experience, Mr. Illusion. So one of the things is, why do this in the first place? Why listen to what a man is thinking? I mean, we live in a society where men often have a large voice in public discourse, sometimes silencing other voices. Don't we hear a lot of male voices anyways? Don't we hear what men are saying about things all the time? And that certainly, when it comes to politics, the corporate world, the media, is very true. But there are things that men don't talk about and don't often articulate and don't learn to articulate in a healthy way, and that can be problematic. So, oops, hold on a second. I've got somebody that needs to be admitted. One moment here. It's not allowing me to, there we go. I need to, okay. So according to the Mental Health Foundation, every year 3 times more men than women die by suicide. Yet only 36% of the people accessing psychological therapies from the NHS are men, so that's roughly a third. So you have a lot of men that need help but are not seeking it. It's hard to get men to express our thoughts and feelings about sensitive topics, and this appears to have harmful consequences. So to address this issue, the immersive audio experience, Mr. Illusion, promotes discussions and role-playing activities centering on masculinity and mental health. So who's talking about this topic anyways? Well, this is a podcast called Sad Boys. It's a comedy podcast with 2 young men who both suffer from depression, ADHD, and they just talk about their events over the course of the week. It's something my daughter Maya told me about. It's this is kind of a new thing. It's got not just young men listening to it, but young women like Maya as well, and sort of speaking about mental health in their own situation. On the other end of the spectrum, you have something like the Men's Sheds Association, where these are older men who are trying to find, what is their place, what is their value to society now that they're aging. In terms of how this all plays out in this dramatic piece, a comedic piece, first we start with Rob's arc. Now at the beginning, the scene you just heard, it's just the tip of the iceberg. I mean, I think if he was in a good place at the beginning of this, he would have a more healthy response to this. He's feeling frustrated, he's in the mood, his wife isn't, a kind of simple situation. But rather than just articulating that and talking about his feelings, he's keeping them bottled up, and we're hearing all these different voices, and some of the voices are saying things that are kind of alarming to her, and other ones are being more sensitive and reasonable because there's a lot of things going on in his head. By the end of the story, he gets to a place where he's more open and he's able to discuss his feelings more openly, and there's no need for her to be listening in on his thoughts. But to begin with, she's realizing there's a lot going on in there that she doesn't know about. So some of the things he experiences in this along the way, he loses a job, he has a health scare, and then they start having marital difficulties, and it all gets him to finally open up and communicate in a more healthy, constructive way. And in the meantime, Beth has an arc as well. She's sort of like us. She's the audience. She's a proxy for us, experiencing, tapping into what's going on with this person she's been with for 20 years and realizing there's a lot going on in there. Initially, as you heard in the voiceover, she sort of thinks of him as a very simple creature, simple needs, very straightforward. But then she starts hearing there's a lot of different conflicting things going on inside of him. And by the end of the piece, she has a more complex view of him and of masculinity in general. So practice research as creation. Here's a project I worked on a few years ago called Shelley's Heart. We're out in the St. Peter's churchyard, and I'm directing some scenes out there. So I've done practice research projects along those lines, where it's a piece that I've written and I've brought together. But there's another way you can do practice research, and that's about organizing participation. So here's the digital storytelling and the community project that I do with Jim Pope every year. Here we are working with some secondary school kids. In this case, I'm not the director. It's this young man, Finn, in front of me is directing this project. and I'm a facilitator that's helping him do it. So the research output is about this participation, and that's what I'm focusing on when I write about this research. So with Mr. Illusion, I was thinking this is an opportunity to bring together both the creation aspect and the participation aspect of this type of research. In terms of the creation, it's doing an immersive audio production that can both model and motivate discussions about masculinity and mental health. So the audience can see it modeled. There's, articulating thoughts, and then maybe get them to actually open up about things. And that leads us to the participation bit, which are improv workshops building on themes for the production, promoting productive discussions and actions. So in terms of creation, here is some aspects of creating the immersive audio piece. First of all, it was a novel, something I wrote 10 years ago. It had many different facets to it. Originally, Beth could tap into not only Rob's thoughts and emotions. She was seeing she could see things through his eyes. She could smell what he was smelling, hear what he was hearing. And it was a way that she could kind of see what was going on in his world when she wasn't even in the same scene with him. And I liked it, but there was still something that felt a little distant about it. It wasn't the same as having a reader or an audience really immersed in the character's perspective. So then I started thinking of this idea of doing it as a theatrical piece where you could surround the audience somehow with Rob's thoughts. So that brought this idea of doing an audio script many years later, and doing it this is this scene that we just were hearing, one of them, writing it out as an audio play, which is a different format than a traditional play. You're really thinking about sound effects, and there's no blocking in it. It's all just about what's being said and what we're hearing. So the next step was to do some table reads. So here's Rebecca and Steve Rollins, who are our actors, and we're going over scenes for it. We also did some acting workshops with Doppelganger Acting Studio at Chaplin's Bar. We had actors come out, and originally we were having them play the different voices, so we had multiple people playing different voices. Ultimately, we decided it would be more interesting to just have the one actor do it, and Steve's very versatile, so that worked out, I think, effectively. We got an artist in residence opportunity last summer from the Lighthouse, which was fantastic. We worked there for a week. Here are the other actors who are also participating, Danielle Cooper and Frank Leon. And we worked out, figuring out how to do the audio for it. And then we went to Bomo Audio. That's Steve in the foreground here, recording audio. There's Rebecca doing some air guitar, rocking out. And we recorded the entire piece. Then I formed Staircase Productions, which is a CIC, so we could work in partnership with charities, and it's a nonprofit. And then we did a tech rehearsal here on campus in Alsbrook Theater. I was able to source 8 speakers, and we put them around in the room, and we were able to do what you just heard through this phones, but in a live setting with the speakers broadcasting it. And so then finally, here we are doing the online taster talk about the piece. So a little bit about why it's immersive audio. In 2015, Chris Milk did a TED Talk talking about this idea that virtual reality and immersive technologies can create what he calls the ultimate empathy machines. Because immersive technologies put you in the shoes of somebody else. They can help you really empathize with them. So in terms of the lit review for the piece, some scholars embraced Milk's idea of the empathy machine. They like the metaphor for immersive technologies. Other people have challenged it as too mechanistic, to think the idea that human behavior is very predictable and can be triggered by immersive media. But all in all, although there have been some overreaching claims about how powerful this is in generating empathy, things like binaural audio, which we're using here, and VR, there's a lot of studies that show there is a strong correlation between enhanced empathy and different forms of immersive technologies. So in this piece, we've done kind of an immersion inversion. In other words, rather than surround somebody with an environment, we've actually put the audience inside the mind of the character, which is a different approach. And it's, in terms of empathy building, this idea of what's it like to be inside of somebody's head and their thoughts. One of the things that we could bring in terms of participation, if we build the thing out, is we could have specialized workshops where we could have volunteers and audience members that wanted to do improvs based on themes from the piece. So that builds on this idea of action therapy, using physical movements, experiential techniques in a dramatic or symbolic ways. People have used this for things like dance, role-playing, and rituals. It's a way of enhancing psychotherapy. So the challenge that we face is getting men to open up about thoughts and feelings. And in Mr. Illusion, the title character doesn't realize his mind's become an open book, but with immersive audio, his internal thoughts become external. And so the question is, can this openness inspire more candid articulations about masculinity and mental health through role-playing activities? So there's a bit of neuroscience behind this idea of improvisation and mental health. There's this thing called the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. It's a region of the brain that heightens inhibitions, stress, and anxiety. So during improvisations, this part of the brain's less active. And then there's the middle prefrontal cortex. It's a region of the brain that enables empathic communication, emotional balance, and intuition, and it's more active during improvisation. So these improvs can bring out more empathic behavior. So connecting creation with participation. How does this all come together? Well, we do a performance. It's a 2-hour performance of the piece, followed by, this is for special workshops, guided improvs, where participants can play characters or inner voices of characters. It could be a 2-hour session, and the improvs could be filmed, and the participants are debriefed, and the findings are analyzed, and journal articles are written about the experience. So here are the research questions. How do audience members articulate views about masculinity before and after experiencing the immersive audio play, Mr. Illusion? How do audience members express themselves during improvised scenes exploring themes introduced by Mr. Illusion? And how do audience members articulate views on masculinity before and after participating in action therapy sessions? So it's a mixed methodology in terms of how, the approach to this. In terms of the creation bit, it's an action research approach. We go through iterative stages of reflecting, planning, acting, observing, and as the project evolves. We're also going to do the action therapy and the participation element, and considering how the participants respond. So I'm going to turn things over to Steve Rafter, and he'll talk about his take on this project as well, and how that informs his research.
Basically, I'll just kind of give a bit of an introduction to my research interest and what I do, I suppose. So I'm a sound designer who works across many creative fields. I've been for over sort of 20 years, I suppose now. I work in film, TV, theatre, for a long time in theatre, installations, live art, audio-only projects such as this, and more recently video game and VR, or the new realities as we're kind of getting to call them now. So my particular interest for research is I'm interested in the convergence of the aesthetic principles of sound design in a range of these kind of formats and these across a range of media, really. So I'm sort of interested in the how, where, and why these principles or techniques differ in across different media forms, basically. I'm particularly interested in applying this these existing aesthetics or techniques into the world of, or the realm of VR and immersive media, particularly VR, because it's kind of a new area where the rules haven't really been written yet. So I'm interested in sort of learning and discovering a bit more about the sort of unwritten rules for that format. Okay, so I just want to go over a few of the kind of related projects that have led Brad and I to where we are at this stage, and have informed some of the thinking that we've gone through. So the first project is a project I worked on a few years ago called Blackout, which was an immersive musical theatrical event from 2017. So the premise about it was believe it or not, this is the show imagined a future energy crisis. Who would have thought it back in 2017 that we'd have a future energy crisis? And it came out of a workshop that was put on by China Plate Theatre, where they paired a writer and a composer together, and they kind of gave them a newspaper and got them to come up with an idea for a musical out of this sort of kind of workshop. So my involvement in it was that it was a musical that was performed over headphones. So the audience were experiencing this musical via wireless headphones. So like you'd get in a silent disco. You can see some of the images there. So the actors you can see in the centre picture there, those without sort of headphones on, they were performing, singing along to backing tracks and acting as in a live musical, and the audience had these headphones on. The reason for doing this was to so that we could divide the audience into two different groups. So you'll notice in some of the pictures, some have got blue headphones on, or headphones with blue lights on, and some have got red. So basically these are two narrative paths that the audience experienced. So we were able to do that by giving the audience an isolated sound experience, basically. So everyone who had blue headphones heard one narrative route, and everyone else with the red headphones experienced another narrative route. So exactly the same scenes, but just in a different narrative order. So sound-wise, what it did was it kind of created a very personal experience. Yes, it was immersive. It was quite intimate. That was some of the feedback we got there. To actually hear somebody singing, seeing somebody singing live in front of you, but hearing them sort of on headphones was a very intimate experience for people. So largely this project was traditional stereo. So as it was a live performance, but we did introduce some binaural or 360 audio pre-recorded sound cues, usually for flashback sequence and that kind of thing. So that was my first sort of kind of experience of developing 360 audio projects. So the next project, which Brad and I both worked on together, this is our first collaboration from 2017 to 2019, was Shelley's Heart, which Brad has spoken a little bit about before. So the premise for this is that it was a modern versions of Mary Shelley and her sort of romantic poet cohort seek out the heart of Percy Shelley and explore the past. So this was an interactive transmedia project, basically meaning that it had different outputs. So there were, if we can see some of the outputs here, there was an interactive theatre. There was kind of like two phases. There was an interactive theatre performance, and then there was also an on-location taster performance, which incorporated live performance and video. I was more involved, I suppose, more heavily involved in the second phase, which was the locative app, which people could actually walk around the site, or they could experience it through a desktop version and hear the audio and interact with the video elements and pre-recorded elements that way. So it was kind of a lot more heavily drawing on the 360 binaural audio experience. So you can see I'm kind of recording some of our actors there. So 360 did feature a lot in these mixes. And this is where we started to kind of think about where to place certain actors, where, using the whole spatial audio area for kind of telling the story and for narrative purposes. This is one of the ideas that were introduced in Shelley's Heart, was this idea of the internal kind of monologue. So although not as extensively as you've heard in Mystery Illusion, but we did kind of look at these, these kind of internal thoughts and where to place them within the stereo field. So this project is where I kind of started thinking about, trying to maybe rediscover the non-diegetic space of 360 audio, which is something I started to think about. Purely as a space to kind of put these internal monologues, internal thoughts. So, and that brings us up to Mystery Illusion, which is 2021, which you've just heard. So the premise: a wife eavesdrops on her husband's thoughts and is surprised by what she discovers. So this is an immersive audio transmedia project written by Brad. So this again has two separate outputs, separate kind of projects, all based on the same script. So one script and two different projects. So the first one is the live performance, which unfortunately we couldn't bring to you today, but it's a live theatre show that would have pre-recorded audio elements in it. 2 acts of 60 minutes each, which gives you 2 hours. And then the second element to it is this podcast, which you've just heard a little bit of, which is basically a radio drama or an audio drama, which we're kind of looking at sort of 10 to 15 minutes per episode. So we're looking at producing 8 episodes of that. And as I say, it's based on the same scripts, but what I'm interested from a research point of view is the sort of comparative treatment of these two pieces of media. Okay, so this is us recording the audio here in my studio. So that's Steve there in the booth, and Steve on the desk there. So there's only a small cast in the theatre piece. There's only four actors, but in the audio piece there's a cast of thousands, as you have just heard. So it's quite challenging for the actors, and also from an editing point of view, from a mixing point of view, because we want each of these characters to kind of occupy their own space. So essentially the piece that you've just heard is built up of two of diegetic dialogue, a diegetic area, as well as the internal thoughts of the main characters. This, which can be sort of considered the non-diegetic space. Okay, or as Michelle Chion calls it, the internal sounds. Right. So the internal dialogue plays out in both the theatre show and the podcast, as you've just heard. So this is us recording the character of Rob's internal monologue that Beth can hear. Each of the way these are the way these are handled in the final outputs are treated very differently. So we recorded all the diegetic audio at the same time during the same session of kind of an intensive 2 days. So that includes the dialogue and all the sound effects, which can be considered sort of diegetic dialogue, diegetic sounds. So in the theatre piece, this is all recorded, all performed live. So we have these kind of, two elements running side by side for two different projects. So some of the things that we had to consider, Brad, if you want to just skip it on a little bit. Okay, and one more. So some of the things that we were considering in putting this together from the recording and from a mixing point of view was, I think this was quite challenging for the actors, was to go from an overlapping kind of live theatre performance where they're kind of flowing in the dialogue and sort of talking over each other and talking naturally between each other, to having separation across each bit of dialogue, because what we need to do is separate them spatially in order to get that sense that Rob is kind of, the thoughts are moving around your head. So in some instances it was kind of a bit tricky to kind of get them to to break the flow a little bit, which I think they did, and then pick it up in a natural way. So also looping, we had to loop the bit where Rob is kind of improvising his musical piece that you just heard. We had to work out how that's all going to fit together spatially and from a recording point of view. And also the big challenge for Steve, I think, was the embodying all these different characters and creating all these different aspects of personality, his personality in his internal monologue. So some of the developments, it's an early stage development. We actually thought about thinking about the Blackout situation, or the Blackout approach was, we thought that originally we entertained the idea of having the 360 elements played out in the theatrical production. But where the project was kind of similar to Blackout, in that we wanted that immersiveness, it was actually very different to Blackout. Brad, if you want to just kind of put on the next couple of slides, actually, or the next couple of. So one of the things we really wanted was, or one of the problems was the fact that the actors in Blackout needed to hear themselves, and the audience needed to hear the actors as well. So that means they needed to be mic'd up and also have in-ear monitoring. Now that might be appropriate for a musical, but it's not really appropriate for this kind of project, where we wanted to that it would get in the way of the performance, really. So that wasn't really appropriate. And the other big thing about that was that we really wanted to connect the audience to each other, so that if they're laughing along, they can hear each other. So we abandoned that idea and moved on to this idea of multiple speakers, which we played through QLab. If you just kind of put on those the next slides. So we used a queuing system called QLab, where and multiple speakers around the auditorium to give that sense that you've just sort of experienced with Rob's point of view. So we have Beth talking, coming out of the main two speakers. That's her internal monologue, and then we have Rob kind of all around. Now for the theatrical, for the podcast, we have the 360 audio employed. Now this is the thing that kind of sets it apart from some of the other projects that I've worked on. This is basically a combination between stereo and binaural sound. So these two this non-diegetic and diegetic environment are treated differently. So that the non-diegetic environment is basically inverting the kind of usual binaural approach. Usually in a binaural production, you might put the listener inside the space, the immersive space. Whereas what we wanted to do was to put the listener inside the space of one of the characters, the headspace of one of the characters. So what we've done is used stereo to create what stereo is really good at, which is making the effect of inside your head locatedness, or IHL, which is kind of when you listen to stereo headphones, you can hear like the sounds emanate from inside your head. 360 or binaural recording puts the sound outside your head. So these are the two kind of diegetic spaces that we're talking about. Really, so that's just kind of what you've just heard, really. So yeah, this is a comparative study from my point of view, and I want to be comparing both treatments of these different approaches to the same text. Lastly, we'd just like to, the idea here is to measure the kind of impact on this by getting the audiences who attend the theatrical performance to actually go to maybe download the audio only project and potentially donate some money to well-being or mental health charity, and that would be a good way of kind of raising money and also testing awareness and testing impact. Okay, Brad, I'll throw over to you.
All right, just to wrap things up, for further development, we're going to be gathering a research team to work on the project, partnering with mental health charities, seeking funding for the project, including a tour, finishing the 360 audio episodes, booking shows and workshops for autumn 2022, doing promotion, rehearsing in early autumn 2022, and then doing performances and workshops through venues throughout the south of England. And while we have some time left, we'll open up for questions. Thank you, everybody. Let me stop sharing.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, Steve. If you've stopped sharing, I can see people now. Have we got any questions or comments? Go for it, Trevor.
Yeah, I was just curious. I really enjoyed it very much, and I think it's a great avenue to go down and to explore. And it really is a great combination, I think, of the ideas and the technology that's there. But I was just curious about the title, Mr. Illusion. Can you say a bit more about
that? There's a point actually when Beth refers to this, where she's basically saying, oh, I can't remember, I'm going to paraphrase myself here, but it was like Mr. Straightforward, Mr., what you see is what you get. Mr. Illusion is more like it. And some of this is about, her seeing, I think if there's one thing that I was hoping to get through with this piece is to, I think men sometimes hide behind a facade of being, I'm a simple guy, simple needs, what you see is what you get. And there's more complexity going on inside than that. And I think, both Beth and Rob have sort of bought into that a little bit, and they both sort of, as through the course of the piece, start to see him in a more complex light. And I think this facade, this illusion, starts to fall away.
Great, thanks very much.
Thank you.
I had a question about the gender focus, which you did already speak to a little bit, just because I kind of felt like we got quite a lot of insight into what his wife was thinking as well. Is that something that does get developed at all, or not so much?
Definitely. I think in this opening scene, there's really two things that need to happen. One is just this farcical conceit that she realizes I can read his thoughts, but there's just the beginning of her seeing that there's more, because what she's saying at the beginning is he's predictable, he's spontaneous as a glacier, but she's kind of comfortable with that. And now when the thoughts come out, some of them are kind of predictable and even childish, because he's feeling frustrated and he's feeling threatened and his ego's being a little wounded. And so there's some things that she might predict, he would say, but then he's also being sensitive at times. He's also being reasonable at times. So he's just this melange of these different things. So that's the other bit where it's a glimpse of complexity. It's not a lot. This is the first layer of the onion getting peeled back. But as the thing progresses and he winds up going through other, deeper, more serious issues, she definitely sees more of him. And I think there's one of the reasons I wanted to deal with sex in the first and get it done with, in a way, because I think that's one of the things that men are sort of looked at like, oh, one-track mind, men think about sex and they're simple and that's all they. So I kind of wanted to get that done and dusted, and then we could get into other topics. And that's why later it gets into the issues of, there's a little hint of it where he says this thing about, oh, she's the marketing director at Edge Unlimited, so she's doing really well in her career. Later he's going to lose his job. And so there's a lot of self-esteem things and other things that are going on. And both of them are trying to sort of navigate through this together. And her perception of him is definitely changing as well.
Yeah, so I suppose I felt like we also got quite a lot of insight into what she was thinking and feeling, because of course we've got her thoughts kind of running through it. So I suppose I just wondered if you were selling it a bit short by saying it's just going to be about male, keeping things bottled up and so on, because I felt like that was already there as well from the female side.
Well, I don't want to completely spoil it, but towards the end there's an inversion. We do get a lot of her thoughts as well.
Cool. Have we got one more question or comment maybe before we wrap up? Because I'm conscious we've got 1 minute left. A question in the chat. Is there a difference in the content between the podcast and the performance? Is the content identical, or will the two platforms differ?
Steve, you want to?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, it's exactly the same in terms of script, but the way we're dealing with like the sound effects and that kind of stuff is very different. So one thing we've noticed is the kind of aesthetic of the theatre piece is a lot more cartoony, I suppose, in terms of the sort of sounds we're using, whereas there's a lot more naturalistic, a lot more realism in the audio only piece. But in terms of the words, it's exactly the same.
Thank you. It's 4 o'clock, so unless we've got any more questions or comments relating to it, I know Bronwyn wanted to say something from a centre point of view. Hi, Bronwyn.
Hi. Yeah, I really enjoyed that. Thanks, Brad and Steve. I think quite a lot of people have gone already, but I just wanted to say thank you to Julia for organising fantastic sessions again this semester. And of course, she's going off on maternity leave soon, so just want to wish you all the best.
Thank you
for that. And yeah.
We'll be back in January.
The plan was to send you off with a drink, but yeah.
I know. It would have been nice to do this
wet the baby's head instead, I'm sure.
Well, these things can. It was still a great show to end with. I think it was a really interesting presentation. So yeah, really grateful to Brad and Steve. And yeah, NCCR seminars will be back in January without me, with Hjor taking the lead. I think we're starting on the 12th with Maheen Ahmed talking about childhood and graphic novels. So I am going to try and make that if I possibly can, but the timing is not looking good. Yeah, thank you very much, Brad and Steve. Thank you to Rebecca and the other actors, because I thought that was amazing. And yeah, great to see everybody this afternoon.
Thank you, Julia.
Wishing you all happy holidays, I guess. And yeah, a better 2022 for us all.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care. Bye.